Welcome back to the Pioneers segment of Reston's African American Legacy Series. I'm David Jackson, along with Reverend Laverne Gill.
Well, hi, David. We are pleased to have with us today one of Reston's institutions. His name is Dr. J. Arthur Jones. And he may at some point want to tell you his full name and the story behind it. But right now, we just want to say welcome, J. Arthur. And we are so glad to have you here. And, you know, I have heard about you. You're almost a legend in the mathematics field. But you didn't start out that way. So why don't you give us an idea about how you started out? And I think about an incident that happened to you when you were in school.
I'm from Greenville, South Carolina, and I attended segregated schools in Greenville, but it turned out to be an asset to my development because I had outstanding teachers. The best teachers taught in the segregated schools in the South. And I had a teacher who was very interested in my education, taught me advanced mathematics at an early age, supported me and other members of my class so that we could get into colleges and also so that we could excel in mathematics and science.
Well, you were, did you come from a well-to-do background?
No.
Why don't you share some of that with us?
No,
because I think that journey is important.
No, we were very, very poor. As a matter of fact, my nickname was Hard Times. So most of the times I had clothing I got from the Salvation Army. So we were very poor. But my mother saw in a magazine that they were giving away free encyclopedia. It's the Encyclopedia Britannica that you could get. What they would do, you get one segment, which would be the words should start with the letter A. And my mother actually said it, and we got the encyclopedia back. But we could only get one copy. We couldn't afford any other copy. So I was an expert on anything that began with the letter A. So anything that started with A, I knew all about it because I read the encyclopedia from cover to cover. But I never was able to get a full set of encyclopedia until I was well into my career.
Well, I remember those Encyclopedia Britannicas,
Yes.
And they did have them all around.
Yes.
You had a story that you told to us about being in school, or going to school, and almost getting robbed.
Oh.
I just
Yes.
think
Oh, yeah. Well, this I actually came to school early in the morning. I was never late for class, so I was always, there's just one or two students there. So this one time we were walking down the hall, and a friend of mine, he went down one hall, and I went down the other hall. But as I was walking down the hall, another student jumped out and put a gun to my head and told me to give him all my money. And I told him I only had 9 cents. And so he still had the gun to my head. I said, I only got 9 cents. I reached in, I showed him that I had 9 cents. And I said, I really don't have any shoes. So I showed him my shoes, and the holes were in the bottom. I had cardboard in there. And he said, he put his gun back in. He said, man, if I had something, I'd help you out. But I don't have anything. So he let me go.
Well, Dr. Jones, maybe instead of my calling you Dr. Jones from this point on, I can just call you Hard Times.
Right.
well, I think there's a reason you called him Dr. Jones, and it's because he was your teacher.
That's exactly right. Back in the day, as we say, I took a calculus course from Dr. Jones. And but Doc, what I remember from that class especially is that you had a knack, a talent, I guess, for making complex simple. You really did. What's the secret there?
Well, I think there's really no secret. It's a matter of reading, comprehending, questioning not only what you're doing, but what other people are doing, and think, because the human mind really loves to solve problems. So some people don't think about it, but if you look and see how popular crossword puzzles are, if you look and see what how much people pay attention. As a matter of fact, the newspaper's been doing crossword puzzles because it gives you an ability to think. So people might say, well, I don't think, I'm not a mathematician. But you make the assumptions about what is happening every day, and you draw conclusions from those assumptions. And so everybody really is a mathematician, whether they want to think of themselves as mathematicians or not. Mathematics really tells you what the world is, what it's about. Tepper just mentioned work that's been done in relativity and in physics, but it's all tied to mathematics. I say God is a great mathematician, much greater than I am. So when I discover certain things, I'm just finding out what God knew all along. That God knew that this was the case.
Yeah.
Well, maybe I can learn. So I look, when I study mathematics, as having not only some other mathematician, but also God as my teacher.
And what is your area of expertise?
My area is several complex variables, so I don't know.
That sounds interesting, John.
It has to do with what mathematicians call mathematical analysis.
Mm-hmm.
And I worked when I was a graduate student at Penn State in this area with a professor who was from Harvard. His name is Dr. Dale Husemeller. He's now at the Max Planck Institute in Germany. But I worked very closely with him, and we solved several problems involving the complex variables.
Okay. I understand that a few years ago, Doc, you run a project with local Reston Basketball League, Mathematics and Science of Basketball. What was that all about?
Right. The Reston Community Association had a basketball league. They still have one. And what I did, I offered to have the youngsters learn about mathematics as they learned about basketball. And so I developed a program called the Mathematics of Basketball. And so students had to learn how to keep statistics. So they did arithmetic. They learned about the shape of the basketball, so they learned about spheres. They learned about how far you run up and down the court when you play basketball. How do you make that kind of an estimate? I had a built-in audience because you could not participate in basketball if you didn't participate in math. I was in with all of the coaches, and so and one of the students who participated in that program actually played professional basketball eventually.
Mm-hmm. So your professional career has been as a professor, and you were also at the National Science Foundation and the National Academy of Science.
That's right.
Well, why don't you just tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I was, of course, my first major job was at Florida A&M, where I was head of the mathematics department.
And that was coming out of Penn State.
That was coming from Penn State. And when I told the students when I arrived at Florida A&M that there is no Florida A&M mathematics, there's mathematics. So there's no Penn State mathematics or MIT mathematics. There's mathematics, and you can learn mathematics. So I started out, worked with the students at Florida A&M. Had many students who achieved great. He's one of them. Great things. I have one of my students who got his PhD from Caltech in nuclear physics. He's one of the top nuclear persons in the world, not just in this country, but he took mathematics, and I recommended him to attend Caltech. Caltech didn't want to take him because they said his score on the English part was low. And I said, oh, but he speaks well. He's a great student. He's a straight A student, and I guarantee you, if you take him into Caltech, he'll do well. And so, based on my plea, Caltech accepted him. He made all A's in all his classes, and he eventually got his PhD in nuclear physics. His name is Charles Slater, and he's from Tallahassee, Florida.
Sure.
Well, you
I
know,
remember him.
Yeah,
I
he's
don't-
now with Oak Ridge National Laboratories.
I don't want to just put you in the scientist category, because to you, your faith is very important. And so unlike the thought that scientists are not religious, you indeed are.
Yeah, I'm very religious, and I believe that, as I said, the God of the universe is a great mathematician, because he made things. He had certain shapes, there's certain sizes. The fact that the Earth is a sphere is very important, because if it was not, if it was just a jagged thing, we wouldn't be able to live on this. And the fact that something like a star that's really thermonuclear explosions, how does it have a shape that's round? You know, who could think of that? I never would have thought of that. Who would have thought? The physics is what God is doing. God has thought all these things out. The best scientists at the National Science Foundation where I work, and I work at the National Academy of Sciences, don't understand. I mean, they've been working for years. Einstein worked for many years. They never understood it, and it's still open for people to find out what it is that God is thinking about.
Well, we want to really continue to talk to you, but I do want to say before we leave that you are a founder of Martin Luther King Jr. Christian Church,
Yes.
Martin Luther King Jr. Cultural Foundation,
Yes.
Martin Luther King Jr. Day, the Math Academy.
Yes.
I just want to throw those in because I
Mhm.
didn't want anybody to miss that. But we appreciate what you've been doing for the community. So many people have been blessed by what you have done. And as a consequence, we'd like to give you just a little token of what you mean to us.
Okay. Thank you. Oh, thank you.
Well, hard times. Thanks so much for joining us. It's been great having you. And I understand you and Adele celebrated your 50th wedding anniversary just a few weeks back.
Yes.
Congratulations on that.
We're looking forward to our next one.
That's terrific. Well, thanks for being with us. And thank you for watching. This is Reston's African American Legacy Series.
Hello and welcome to Reston's African American Legacy Program. I'm Cheryl Fields, and I'm joined today by my co-host, Pamela Ahart Stewart. And we are very happy to have with us two guests who Pamela knows very well. We have Menda and Thomas Ahart, both of whom have lived in Reston since 1971. They arrived here after living in Arlington for about a year, and in the years since have done a lot to contribute to our community. I'll talk a little bit about Menda, and then we'll talk about Tom. Menda, you have a longtime member of some women's service organizations here in Reston. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, I guess I've always been a joiner. I guess I get that from my dad. He was an officer in church. He was a member of the Elks. And so I've always kind of wanted to join into a group that's doing something for the community. Service has been a big part of my life. So I was involved, of course, in college with the sorority, and moving to Reston. Again, I was active with my sorority, Alpha Kappa Alpha. I'll get that plug
Get that in there.
And the Links Incorporated for a while with the National Council of Negro Women, a founding member of Jack and Jill of America. So you can see
the Reston chapter.
the Reston chapter, right, Reston chapter of all of these. So you can see I'm a joiner. And I don't seek leadership positions, but people kind of tap me and say, okay, you can be president. So I've been president of 2 or 3 of these organizations. my daughter will comment that I was always going to meetings, but that's the service part of my life, I guess. I enjoy giving back. There's a quote in the Bible, I think, that says, "To whom much has been given, much is required." So I kind of take that to heart.
Now, did you come from a family where that was also a
I guess
core
I got
value
more
for
from
you?
my dad. Then my mom was kind of a stay-at-home mom, and the family was the core of her existence. So from my dad, and the church. The church teaches you service, and you get involved with the little children's programs. And I guess that's where my singing started too. I know you're going to ask me
Of
that.
course, I'm going to ask you about your singing. But for those of you who are watching, you may recognize Menda because you've probably seen her in one of her many performances. Tell us a little bit about that.
I've been singing all my life. You've heard that before, but it's true. From the children's choir at church to the adult chancel choir that sang the anthems, to the gospel choir, to a college choir, and on my college campus I sang with a doo-wop group. Remember those doo-wop songs? 4 guys and myself, and that was a good time. And I also sang with a jazz combo at college, and we sang, we played at sorority and fraternity dances. So singing all the time, and whatever, I love all kinds of music, and so that's my passion, I guess you'd say.
Well, and I was going to ask you because in addition to your singing, you've had all this service to community. How have you been able to balance that intersection between your love for music and your drive to be a part of community service?
I guess along with working as a working mom, when we first came here, I was home for 10 years with the kids and then went back to work. But you find time for things that you want to do. You always find time. And the singing, of course, in the church choir always, and with the community choir, Mosaic Harmony. But then always finding time to go to meetings with the sororities and the other organizations. You're doing work in the community. You're giving scholarships for youngsters, and that giving back attitude has always been there. So you carve out time, and then looking back now, I wonder how did I work and raise kids and go to meetings and sing. But you do it, and you know.
Yes, because that's the story of my life these days.
But one more thing with the music, I wanted to add, and sometimes I, not really regret it, but I actually auditioned with Motown.
Tell us about that.
A friend of mine in college knew someone at Motown and said, "Menda, come and audition." And I said, "Okay." So I auditioned. They liked my voice. And I think they really wanted to offer to groom me. You know how they groom the
Supremes.
the Supremes and the Marvelettes and all those. I think I was a junior in college, and I had to make the decision of my life, I guess, that I wanted to stay in school and I wanted to finish college. And I said I can pick up the singing later. So I kind of said no to that. I was going to school at Michigan State University in Lansing, and of course this was Motown was in Detroit. So I said no. And years later, when I see the Supremes and all these performers, I say, that could be me.
But then we might not have as good access to you, so we're happy
No,
about that.
in the end, it was the best decision because I was naive and I may have been pulled into other things. So God was leading me where He wanted me to go.
Well, Tom, I wanted to shift focus to you a little bit because you too have done quite a bit of community service. I know you have your own consulting firm, the Ahart Group, which is a financial services firm. But talk to us a little bit about some of the other things you've done. I know you said you had co-chaired the Reston Festival at one point, and you served on the board of Northern Virginia Community College. So let's talk a little bit about some of that activity and what it's meant to balance between the two of you having these very busy community service
Well,
activities.
I have to begin by saying that I've always been a very curious person. And I've always felt that there were no bad questions, just bad answers. And I started out life to be a journalist. And I was starting in high school. I wrote for weekly newspapers, including the Black Press. And then in college, I continued to work on the College Collegian paper. But that started in high school because I was editor-in-chief of the high school newspaper. So I was always involved with asking and seeking answers and listening to the answers. Because I had to train myself to, am I getting an answer or am I getting a statement? And as a journalist, you learn to, by not being intrusive, to at least get back to that. But that led me then to having some great mentors in my life. My first and two most important mentors were my mother and grandmother, who raised 5 children in a 2 and sometimes I say 3-bedroom house, but it was really 2. And then in high school, I met a great guy who turned out to be a mentor and got me involved in community activities, primarily through the local chapter of the NAACP. And that led me to become the chairman of our local group, or president, then president of the Michigan State NAACP Youth Conference, and then on to becoming a member of the NAACP National Youth Work Committee. And then when I got into college, and after college, I continued that community involvement. When I pledged my fraternity, Omega Psi Phi, I was the only pledge on the campus. And that gave me a heads up, because I said, if you hit me, I'm gone. And that didn't happen. But my mentor that got me was an Omega. And I remember being a pledge one day and then being elected the bossilus, or president of the fraternity, the next, because again, I was the only undergraduate on campus at the time. And then met a great group of guys who joined the fraternity. And I was the one pledge on campus, and then recruited 9 guys to become a pledge Omega. And that was in 1960 that I became the bossilus. And and it was at Wayne State University, and the chapter has been on the campus ever since. And I feel very proud of that. In fact, I'm still in touch with some of those guys that were on the chapter. But my father, even though my parents were divorced, we had a very close working relationship. And my father was a small businessman. Now, I call it a small businessman, but my father actually owned a truck. And it was a pickup truck. I guess that's what it's called. But he used that to do all kinds of things to make a living. He would move people with the truck. He would buy furniture and refurbish it and do whatever he could to make a buck to keep the family going. And that got me, I think, the entrepreneurial spirit. I worked, came to Washington. We moved here in 1971 to work for the American Bankers Association. Now, I had spent my life up to that point being a journalist. And so I suddenly had to learn the banking industry, how banks operate, and all of the terminology of that industry.
Because we're asking your questions came in handy.
Yes,
Sure.
but also I was blessed because the chairman of then the Franklin National Bank was a guy who had written a book on banking and banking operations. And when I was with the ABA, I managed a $4.5 million investment fund that made investments in minority-owned banks and women's banks and so on. But it was almost like a Socratic kind of experience for me. We traveled 2 or 3 times a month, and I could ask him all kinds of questions, like, what is loans to deposit ratio? What is liquidity? What is this? What is that? And since we were on a plane normally for 3 hours, he could answer, and I learned from that. And then when I started my own business, to become ultimately the Ahart Group, I became aware of the need and how to manage a staff. And so that's what I did for that time.
Well,
But my community involvement, and I just want to share, is that when we moved to Reston, I had been in the Detroit JCs, and I wanted to join the JCs when I moved to Detroit. We moved to Reston, so I joined the JCs, and that led to Minda becoming involved with then the JC Wives Club that became the Geminis, but also she became the president of that. So it's been that kind of thing, and then out in the community, I was co-chair with 3 other people, one of the Reston festivals, birthday festivals, and then we have just been involved. You know, I've served on the board of a African American Adoptions for a few years, and now I'm the executive director of an organization called the Family and Youth Advocacy Center. And my wonderful daughter keeps me in track.
Well, we've only got a couple minutes left here, but Pam, I'm just going to ask you, what was it like for you growing up with these very busy people?
Well, it was wonderful. I mean, you know, my mother always inspired me. Well, I'll put it like this. They both believed in me more than I believed in myself. And what that did for me was allow me to kind of step out the box. They challenged me to step out the box, which ultimately I started my own business. So I can say I got my entrepreneurial spirit from my father, who I love dearly, and thank him for that, because only until I became an adult did I really know, you know. And then with my mother, I can now say I'm a joiner. I wasn't a joiner in the beginning, so I feel wonderful about that. So I'm very thankful
So
to
it's all
have
come
them.
full
Yes.
circle. Well, we
Yes.
have a little token of appreciation that we'd like to share with both of you, just for the contributions you've made to our community. And of course, you've now
Yes.
given us more longevity with your legacy here by adding Pam to the mix. So thank you very much for
Thank
joining
you very
us.
much.
Thank you.
We'll have to have you come back so you can tell us about some of the new things that you're doing.
A pleasure.
We are very happy that you've joined us. This has been a lovely discussion with Menda and Thomas Ahart. This is Reston's African American Legacy Program. Please come back and join us again. We'll see you then. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, good.